at Town Hall today. All regular practices and procedures of the committee will continue to apply during this electronic meeting. If we encounter any technical difficulties, we may take a brief recess while they are resolved. Thank you for your patience. We'll now proceed with the meeting. I'll now like to call this meeting to order. And before I do, we would like to begin this meeting by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is situated within the traditional and treaty territory of the Mississaugas, more specifically the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation, signatories of the Gunshot Treaty of 1788 and the Williams Treaties of 1923. This land is and will continue to be home of the Indigenous peoples. Let us acknowledge the mistakes and traumas of the past through authenticity and support truth and reconciliation. Let us engage and celebrate Indigenous communities by being leaders of action and acknowledging the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples and the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's recommendations towards truth and reconciliation. Let us keep these principles close as we continue towards truth and reconciliation, and as we move forward with kindness and respect as a community. Before moving on to the application portion of this meeting, I would like to confirm whether there are any disclosure of interest from the members of committee this today. Okay, none are identified. Thank you. So before we carry forward, I will briefly cover the mandate of the Committee of Adjustments. This committee is bound by the Planning Act to assess each application based upon its ability to meet the four tests: that the application is minor in nature, it's desirable for the appropriate development or use of the lands, and finally, it's in keeping with the general intent and purpose of the official plan and zoning bylaw. The process for tonight's meeting will be conducted in the following manner. The applicant and agent will be called upon, and at their option, they may provide a brief description of the minor variance application that they have applied for. The committee members may ask questions of the applicant and or the agent, after which anyone with a direct interest in the application will be given the opportunity to speak either for or against the application. Once a motion is put forward, once a motion is put forward by a committee member, there will be no further input from the applicant or anyone having interest in the application. After a decision is made, a notice will be sent out and there will be a 20-day appeal period. The decision of the committee may be appealed to the Ontario Land Tribunal, the OLT, by the applicant or a specified person or public body as outlined in the Planning Act. Please note that the third-party appeals are not permitted. After the 20 days, the decision will become final and binding. If a building permit or other approvals are required, they may be filed during the appeal period. However, no permits or approvals will be issued until after the appeal period is over, and at which point the decision becomes final and binding. A respectful decorum during this evening's proceedings is expected of all present at the time. I'd like to now take a moment to introduce you to the committee members presiding over the procedures this evening. Remotely, we have Tomas Baca, Bernadette Santiago, and in council chambers this evening, starting from my far right, we have Brian Hayes, followed by Ken Elliott, and I'm the chair of the committee this evening, Wasif Ahmed. I'd also like to introduce the staff to my left in council chambers: Sarah Moore, who's a legislative specialist, Josh Estrella, who's a planner with the town of Ajax, and Eric Simpson, who's a senior planner and secretary-treasurer of the Committee of Adjustments. We will now proceed to the application portion of tonight's meeting, and you'll see that on the screen shortly.
Mr. Chair, we skipped over adoption of the minutes.
I will do that next. Thank you. We also do have the committee members from our July meeting. The minutes that were put forth by the secretary and treasurer of the committee, and I look to a motion from my committee members to see if anybody's willing to put a motion to adopt those minutes from the July meeting.
Mr. Chair, I'm prepared to put a motion to adopt the minutes from last meeting.
Okay, thank you, Bernadette. Do we have a seconder? Okay.
I'll second.
Thank you, Brian. So I have you as a seconder. And any discussion on the motion for the adoption? Seeing none. All right, then I look to a vote on your screens, committee members. And the vote is carried unanimously. Perfect, thank you. We will now move into the application portion of tonight's meeting of Wednesday, August the 30th. And the first application that we have in front of us is application A2223 for 33 Lincoln Street, submitted by MEM Engineering, Inc. And this is to permit a maximum gross floor area of 112 square meters for all accessory buildings and structures, and to permit a maximum accessory building height of 5.5 meters. Is the applicant here?
Yes, Mr. Chair. My name is Abhishek Rajgor from MEM Engineering on behalf of the owners for the subject application.
Okay, good evening, Mr. Rajgor. I will just see if staff can help us maybe raise the volume a little bit. Okay, can we ask, is it okay if I ask? Mr. Rajgor, we're having a little bit of trouble hearing you clearly. Are you able to maybe just increase the volume on your end?
Yes, sure. Am I better heard now?
Yes, that's a little bit better. Committee members and chambers, we're good? Okay, perfect. Thank you. So thank you for joining us this evening. We have before I hand over the mic to you, I will let you and audience here know that the committee has received a staff report, as is common practice for each application, that does recommend approval for this application, subject to 5 conditions: that the subject variances apply only to the property municipally known as 33 Lincoln Street, substantially in accordance with the drawings submitted with this application as generally illustrated in the figures, or the decision shall become null and void. Second condition is that the owner applicant maintain the existing trees and vegetation located along the rear lot line of the subject property and the abutting interior sod lot line of 67 Church Street South, or this decision shall become null and void. Condition number 3 of 5, that the proposed accessory building be limited to a maximum ground floor area of 60 square meters, or this decision shall become null and void. Number 4, that the owner applicant maintain the existing drainage on the property, or this decision shall become null and void. And finally, to round it out, number 5, that the owner applicant obtain all building permits from the town's building services section, or this decision shall become null and void. Mr. Rajgor, are you familiar with these conditions, and do yourself or the applicant agree to all of them?
Yes, Mr. Chair. The conditions are familiar, and I believe the owners themselves and ourselves are in agreement of these conditions, and they shall be adhered to through the building permit and the other approval processes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rajagor. So, sir and ma'am, good evening. So can you just maybe speak your name into the mic? Just
Yeah, good evening, everybody.
good evening. And what are your names?
Yeah, my name is Veena Joshi and his name is Vijay Joshi. We are the owner of the property.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So between the three of yourselves, would one of you like to maybe tell us a little bit about the project so that the committee becomes familiar with what you're trying to do?
Okay, we have an existing garage. It's a two-story garage, and the height is like about 18 plus feet, and but the roof is slanted. So what we are going to do is just raise the roof from both the sides and just keep the existing structure, like existing area and everything will be the same.
We will just convert that into dwelling unit. We agree to all this.
Okay, all right, perfect. So, Mr. Rajagor, did you want to add anything?
Yes, Mr. Chair. So, as the owners outlined, that the existing footprint shall remain as is, while the roof of the existing structure shall be replaced with a new walls and the flat roof, thereby triggering the variance for the maximum height of 5.5 meters, while keeping the existing footprint as is, and it's going to be used as an additional dwelling unit, and also adding to the fact that there shall be no windows on the east lot line, um, abutting the neighbor's side, and I think all other conditions as mentioned in the letter shall be followed.
Okay, thank you. I will then look to town staff to just confirm whether notice was served on this application for 33 Lincoln Street.
Mr. Chair, notice was served.
Okay. And were there any correspondence received?
There was the one piece which was provided to the committee.
Okay. And I can confirm on behalf of the committee that we did receive that one piece. Okay. Which was generally just a question, it seemed like, right? Okay. Thank you. All right. Then I'll look to my fellow committee members to see if they have any questions for the applicant or the agent. If you do, you can, on your interface in front of you, just press the talk button. Okay, so I see no questions, and just going to look over to town staff to make sure that's not a technical issue. Okay, perfect, thank you. All right, that being the case, then I will, I do see somebody in the audience that's wanting to speak, so I'll give you 1 second, ma'am. Again, committee members, I see no other questions, so I will look for anybody else in the audience that is here to either speak for or against the application. So Mr. and Mrs. Joshi, I'll ask you to maybe just sit down and have a seat. Thank you. And ma'am, I think you've identified yourself as somebody that wants to speak for or against. And if we can just start with having your name.
Yes, hello, good evening, thank you. My name is Ann Lavery. I live across the street from you at 42 Lincoln. I opened up the mail yesterday, and this is the first time I'm reading anything about this. I did see a sign on their front lawn, a small sign about 1 foot by 1.5 foot, very small. I don't know when you started the application. I'm trying to find out what this accessory building is going to be, what's happening with the parking, is it rented? A few other questions. Because this is the first time I've seen anything about this. Is it going to sit on the same footings as the existing garage? There is an existing garage to the east end. It doesn't take up the whole portion. They have a single lane driveway. My question is this a rental? How are the cars going to get back and forth? I don't know if these have been asked. I don't know if these have been looked at. I'm here because I was told if I wanted to find out more to come here tonight, and so I am.
Okay. All right, ma'am, I don't know if I just didn't write it down. I apologize. What was your name again, ma'am?
Anne, A-N-N-E,
Lavery?
L-A-V-R-I-H. 42.
Okay, thank you. So maybe what I'll do is I'll look to Josh, if you wouldn't mind maybe giving us a quick recap of the project itself, if that's okay.
Sure. Through the chair, the application is the minor variance at hand is for a larger gross floor area and for additional height for an accessory building to eventually facilitate a dwelling unit. As mentioned in the staff report, and I guess for the member of the public, for Ms. Lavery, the proposal is to replace the existing garage with this dwelling unit in roughly the same kind of footprint and massing, so about the same, basically where the garage is now, just replaced with a dwelling unit. In terms of the parking, the requirement under the town zoning bylaw would be a total of 4 parking spaces for this property, and the proposal at hand provides that amount with, I believe, 7 parking spaces in their in their proposed layout. Through the chair, were there any other questions either from the committee or from the public I could answer?
Yeah. And to staff, if you can just confirm for my knowledge as well as the questioner here, I believe the applicant doesn't actually have to disclose at this point in time or be bound by whether this is a rental unit or not. They can keep it for family, et cetera, as long as it does meet the requirements of an ADU or an accessory unit that is built for either family or for rental, correct?
Through the chair, that is correct. Staff don't look at the tenancy of the proposed dwelling unit. We we
But it's
don't do
converting
people
from garage to residential.
through the chair, that's correct.
Yes.
All right. And what is the square footage? Because I find that there's very little information on what I received. It doesn't even say the square footage of how big this accessory home is, only the height.
Through the
And it
chair,
looks like it's a flat roof?
through the chair, the footprint of the building's 56 square meters, I believe, and the gross floor area,
Dimensions? Like 20 by 30?
whatever the existing garage is, I'd have to pull up the details, but
So
the
it
overall
will be the
calculations.
existing garage space?
Yes, that's the
Okay.
proposal. The height is 5.5 meters, whereas the applicants have mentioned 18 feet, flat roof, and, yeah.
Okay. What about windows around the sides and the back?
Yeah. So maybe, Sarah, are you able to project figure? I don't know if that's possible.
I haven't seen anything of it.
So
but
through-
only this
through the
one,
chair, if I can just
only
jump
this
in.
one design here.
There is a staff report, however, you'd indicated that you just got that notice today. So, but you'll see in that notice, it does indicate that staff reports are available at request. And our contact information is there. So there is a lot more detail, which is why you don't know, but it is publicly available.
Okay.
Yeah.
So was there a previous meeting on this before?
No, so this is
Okay.
a minor variance application. So when an application comes in, we have a certain timeline to process it, and notice of a public meeting, which is this meeting, we have to give 10 days prior. So that's why the notice was posted on their property and it went out in the mail.
The reason why I asked, only because you had made a reference on the video to a earlier June or July meeting.
Different
So
topics.
that, yeah,
Fair
Okay.
question. Yeah,
Okay.
no, different topics.
that's all.
The
Okay,
committee meets every month, so that was just last month, so different applications entirely.
So to get more on the design, to go into the committee, and I could find this all online.
Yep,
Okay.
it's posted on the agenda online, or you can reach out to staff and we can provide the report.
And tonight you're voting on.
We're voting on, the committee's voting on whether or not to approve it. Staff just provide a recommendation.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
All right, no problem. Thank you for coming out. All right, is there anybody else in the audience here or online that is willing to speak either for or against this application? Again, we're on application for 33 Lincoln Street, application number A2223. Okay, seeing none. Any other discussion from committee members on the application? Hearing none, then I will look for a vote on the application itself.
Mr. Chair, I would like to propose to approve the application A22-23, subject to all staff conditions on the basis that it is minor in nature, desirable for the appropriate development and use of the property, and in keeping with the general intent and purpose of the official plan and zoning bylaw.
Okay, motion heard. Can I get a seconder?
Mr. Chair, I would second the motion.
Okay, thank you, Ken. And any discussion on the motion as put forth? Okay, seeing none, so we will now take a vote on the interface. And the motion is carried unanimously for application A2223 for 33 Lincoln Street. So thank you, Mr. Rashkor. Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Joshi. The committee will now move to agenda item the next agenda item for application A2323. This is for 32 Cater Avenue, also submitted by MEM Engineering, and this application is seeking to permit uncovered steps leading to a below-grade entrance within the south interior side yard with a minimum setback of 0.1 meters from the interior side lot line. Eric, can you confirm whether notice was served on this application and whether there were any correspondence received?
Mr. Chair, notice was served and there was no correspondence received.
Okay, appreciate that. Thank you. And Sarah, do you know if we have an applicant here to speak for this? Okay, perfect. Good evening again, Mr. Rajgor. So the committee has in front of it another staff report recommending approval for A2323 for 32 Cater Avenue, subject to 6 conditions: that the subject variance apply only to the property municipally known as 32 Cater, and as illustrated in Figure 2 contained herein, or this decision shall become null and void, that an unobstructed pedestrian path of travel to or from the uncovered steps be maintained at all times on the subject property. Number 3, that an unobstructed pedestrian path of travel to or from the rear yard be maintained at all times on the subject property. Number 4, that any existing utilities be relocated as necessary in consultation with the applicable utility agencies and the town's building services section to a location that does not impede access to or from the uncovered steps. Number 5, that the owner applicant maintain the existing drainage on the property. Number 6, that the owner applicant obtain all necessary building permits from the town's building services section, or this decision shall become null and void. Have you had a chance to receive the staff report, go through the conditions, and are you in agreement?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Yeah, we have received these conditions, and we and the owners themselves are in the agreement of all these conditions to maintain the unobstructed path to maintain on the side yard and the rear yard, and as well as also to relocate if any existing utilities may be causing a hindrance to cause an access.
Okay, appreciate that. And could you maybe tell the committee a little bit about the project?
Yes, sure, Mr. Chair. So this application earlier had been submitted to the town of Ajax for a finished basement for the owner use with a proposed side door on grade, and the application was approved as well. But due to an on-site discrepancy, the door was though constructed on grade, but there was an internal access conflict, meaning got to do with the existing internal landing, which is why the issue of having an below grade steps, now 2 risers, is how what we estimate here, came up in the picture, where we needed to lower the as-built door, and which is why an encroachment in the side yard was necessary, and that's how we came up with the revised proposal to have these 2 steps that start from the front, and then again 2 steps rise up so that the access to the rear yard is not blocked. Also maintaining the drainage without impeding the existing drainage, while not even affecting the neighbor's property. And that way, the current owner can still have the door on the side to access the basement. If should the committee find merit in this application, we shall be submitting a revision application to the town for a revised building permit.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Ms. Rajgor. I look to my fellow committee members to see if they have any questions on the application. Again, we're on application A2323 and for 32 Cater. Go ahead, Ken.
Sarah, are you able to put up the figure 2, which is page 30 of the committee agenda? And my clarification through you, Mr. Chair, is how many steps down and how many steps up are there going to be for this application? So what is the depth of the excavation? It's not really showing up in
Yeah,
Yeah, Mr. Rajgor, if you have the answer, you can go ahead.
okay. Through you, Mr. Chair. As per the site plan proposed, we are proposing 2 risers to go and reach the new below grade landing, and the overall depth will be less than 24 inches. A typical riser, as per the code requirement, is 8 inches, and 2 of them would amount to less than 24 inches in this case at any point. And 2 risers shall be sufficient for having the landing of the inside of the house to match with the exterior landing.
Okay.
Thank you.
No problem. Thank you, Ms. Rajkumar. Any other questions from committee members? Go ahead, Brian.
It's not in the report, but this is just some commentary. The stairwell, for lack of a better term, is going to have to be lit. Please take into account lighting down versus across, so it's going to minimize the disturbance to your neighbor. And snow clearing, depending on how the winter is, we want to make sure that the snow is cleared out and on the existing property, not put on the neighbor's property. And I'm assuming there's going to be some type of railing along the top of the stairwell to prevent anybody from falling in, even though it is just a couple steps.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we acknowledge the requirement for having the lighting and to face it downlit so as to not obstruct the neighbors, and as well as the requirement to have the snow removal and be stored on within the property and not at the neighbor's property. However, with regards to the requirement for the railing, what we believe is if the level difference is less than 24 inches, we would not be required to have, and then it may pose other issues if the railing comes in there.
It's looked after through the building permit or the permitting stage.
Yeah.
Okay. No further questions. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. All right. Looking again to committee members, if anybody else has any other questions, I see Ken. Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Chair. For this property, as I understand the picture that is included in our report, there is currently no fence that is occurring between the two properties. But I see that the other neighboring property, Sarah, this is page 31.
Yeah.
Yes. Is there some kind of an intent to make provision for fencing in the event that either neighbor wishes to put it up? And how could that impact the staircase and the landing?
Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you. That's a very good point. Um, uh, as of now, we are not aware of any intention that a fence would be put up between the two neighbors. And I believe if a moment comes where a fencing is needed, or if one of the owners required, I believe so. It could be either. I mean, this is our opinion in this case, that if the neighbor decides to put the fence, ideally they would want to be putting it on their property line, or if the owner of 32 Cater Avenue would want to initiate, they would be putting it on their property line. And if they mutually agree, they could be either using the retaining wall that is being proposed with these steps, and the fencing could be sitting on top of the retaining wall, or could be slightly offset, given how the site condition at that time permits for the installation of the fence. But and the challenge over there would be in typical with regards to the length of these steps, which I believe would be approximately 3 feet plus about 5 feet in length, where these steps would start and end. Um, and I'm not able to speculate exactly how that would turn out to be, but in either ways or in all scenarios, there would be a possible solution that can be made available.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you again, Mr. Rajkumar. Looking again to committee members to see if there's any other questions. Okay. Seeing and hearing none. Is there anybody here live in audience or online that would be willing to speak either for or against the application? Again, we're on 32 Cater Avenue, application A2323. Okay. Seeing none, then I will look to my committee members to see if there's somebody willing to put in a motion. Ken?
Mr. Chair, through you, I would move approval of the application subject to the conditions as recommended by staff.
Okay. Perfect. Do we have a seconder?
Mr. Chair, I'm prepared to second that.
Okay. Thank you, Bernadette. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none. All right, then we'll take a vote on the interface. All those in favor? Okay, the vote has been carried unanimously. So the application, Mr. Rajgor, has been approved and subject to the 20-day appeal period, as you're well aware. Thank you for your participation this evening. All right, so we will now go to our third application, item 5C on the agenda. This is for 18 McGill Drive, application A2423. The application is seeking to permit a minimum setback from the rear lot line of 4.5 meters and to permit a maximum lot coverage of 49%. Eric, can you confirm whether notice was served and whether there was any correspondence received?
Notice was served and no correspondence was received.
Okay, thank you. And do we have anybody here representing this application for 18 McGill Drive today?
Yes, hello, Mr. Chair. We're the owners, Andrew and Seema.
Okay, good evening to you both. As you may know, we do have an application, for your application, a staff report as prepared by the Town of Ajax Planning Department that does recommend approval to the committee members. And it is subject to the following conditions. I'm just going to read them out, just so I want to make sure that I have either your acknowledgement or your consent. That the subject variances apply only to the property municipally known as 18 McGill Road, as illustrated on the drawings that were submitted with this application. Condition number 2, that the owner applicant maintain the existing drainage on the property. And finally, condition number 3, that the owner applicant obtain all necessary building permits from the town's building services section. And contravening any one of these conditions would mean that the decision will become null and void. Are you familiar with these, and are you in agreement with them?
Yes, I'm familiar and I'm in agreement.
Okay, perfect. That said, would you be able to perhaps tell a little bit about the project?
So basically, we want to, they call it an addition. We want to put a sunroom, from our back where we have an existing deck. We want to demolish that deck and replace it with a sunroom so that we can go out and enjoy the area, right? So we decided to stay in Ajax, so we decided to invest a little bit more in our house and give it a little bit more, appeal. And when our friends and family come over, they don't have to go through the house. They can go in the back and take it easy and relax out there without going into the house and stuff, right?
Okay, so the footprint of the sunroom would be pretty much dead center to the current footprint of the deck?
Correct. It's basically 14 by 18, right? And then we're thinking about building a deck around it.
Okay.
Or either a patio. But the actual setback's going to be 4.5 meters from the fence, and we're going to structure, like, you're not allowed to have more than 45, but the variance is 49, but it'll be a little less than 49. I think they gave us a little leeway with the 49%.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we're all in line with the, the minor variance parameters, and it'll be a company called CADK that will be building, it's a pre-fabbed sunroom, all glass structure, right? That they'll put with the proper foundation and stuff like that, right?
Okay. All right, good. And I believe it is just over 2 meters above ground, correct?
Correct. So where our double doors to exit onto the deck, it's going to be exactly the same level as the deck that we had a permit for 12 years ago, right?
Okay, understood. Thank you. I'll look to my committee members to see if there's any questions. Brian, did you have one? No? Okay, sorry. Okay. Again, just checking to see again, fellow committee members, if anybody has any questions. Seeing none. Okay, perfect. Is there anybody here that's willing to speak either for or against the application, whether in person or online? Okay, seeing none there as well. All right. Then I will look for the committee members to see if anybody's willing to put a motion.
Mr. Chair, I am prepared to put a motion for that we approve the minor variance application A24-23, subject to the 3 conditions listed in the staff report in that this application is minor in nature, desirable for the appropriate development of the use of the property, and finally, is in keeping with the general intent and purpose of the official plan and zoning bylaw.
Thank you, Bernadette. Thank you, Bernadette. Do we have a seconder on that?
I will second the motion, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Tomas. And any discussion on the motion amongst the committee members? Seeing none. All right, then I will look for a vote. And the vote has been carried unanimously. So thank you to you, Mr. and Mrs. Odette. Appreciate it. Good luck with your project, and subject to the 20-day appeal period, of course.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and all the committee members.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening. All right. So that completes the application portion of this evening's meeting, and we will now move to other business and new business agenda item. Is there any new business or other business from committee members or staff? Okay. Seeing none, then I will move to an adjournment motion if somebody's willing to put that forth.
Mr. Chair, I move to adjourn this evening's meeting.
Okay, thank you, Bernadette. Noted. And can I get a seconder on that?
I second the motion to adjourn.
Okay, perfect. And then I will look for a vote. Okay, perfect. So the vote has been carried, and that adjourns this evening's session of the Committee of Adjustments meeting. Our next meeting will be on Wednesday, September the 27th, and we will adjourn this meeting now.